Oh, here's Carl joining us in the waiting room. Hi, Carl. Can you hear us all right in the room?
So, yeah, I think I can.
Great, welcome.
Thank you.
All right, hi Carl. So this is my first time and we don't have a quorum to start with. So we, as you said, we're going to save the minute discussion for after. And, oh, well, it looks like maybe we have some public, do we have public, members of the public here that would like to make a comment?
Members of the
Yeah.
public
All right.
like to propose an idea.
All right, can you introduce yourself and tell us your idea?
Yeah,
So, I'm Mason, I'm a seventh grader and, I'm coming here to propose to, place a birdhouse geocache in the Catamount Family Center. So geocaching is basically an international treasure hunt, so, and it's GPS related. This geocache is gonna be placed off this, like, the side of the trail, so it won't disturb, any of like the hikers, um. And it will be maintained, so it won't disturb the wildlife there.
yeah, and we're open to ideas about. So, we were working on our geocache merit badge and we've been doing geocaching for 2 years. We have a favorite down in Colchester on Thayer Beach. Has anyone done geocaching before?
Can you describe it in case
Yeah.
people don't know what it is?
So basically, there's an app for it and it gets people outdoors. And so really anybody can place one. And so you give the coordinates of the location and you have to search for it. And yeah.
And that's it, yeah, it's normally something that's a little bit hidden. And the one we did for down on Thayer Beach is actually a stump that we cut in half and then hold out. And so it blends in super well. It has a lot of favorite points. And we thought that the Catamount Family Center would be another good location. And when we were hiking around it the other day for an orientation requirement, we thought of this proposal. So, proposal of it also being a birdhouse, because there's a couple birdhouses.
In the birds, so, but birds wouldn't be in there.
No.
It would be your geocache thing.
Just an aesthetic birdhouse.
Yeah.
Yes, yeah.
Sure.
Okay, so I don't know if we have time. So we have a model that we were working on. It doesn't have to go here in the woods. Not taking up all your time.
No, it's all right. It's what the committee's here for.
Mason built this.
For the birdhouse and the geocache, which is a physical container, would go inside it.
Very nice.
Yeah. And then, open to any ideas of how to put it on too, like we didn't want to damage a tree. We could do camouflage paracord. So, and it would go up over a branch and then come down. So. Fun, yes.
Yeah.
So, it's an idea we just wanted to bring to you guys. And, open to suggestions. Yes,
Great, well,
so.
yeah, first of all, thank you so much for coming and presenting your idea. Does anyone have any questions?
Yeah, I think it's a great idea. I've done geocaching with my daughter through some of her Girl Scout activities. I think it's a great way to bring people to Catamount. I think there's definitely a number of questions that present itself. I'm part of the Nest Watch program. So if you've been up there, you've seen the different bird boxes around.
Yeah.
There's a certain time of year in which we probably wouldn't want large numbers of people coming to just sort of examine every birdhouse, because it would disturb the birds that are trying to nest there. So there might be some way we'd have to work around that, I suppose.
And we
And
could put it far away from the existing bird boxes.
Yeah.
As a way to separate that use for
Yeah.
sure.
right, so they'd be going by a GPS coordinate. And so, right, so they wouldn't know it's a birdhouse until they got to the location.
I see.
And it'll be like a 16-foot radius, so
Yes.
it wouldn't be like really far.
Right, so that's a good one, and then Mason just built this birdhouse, does not have to be a birdhouse. So we could do a stump, or just something, my point is something of quality,
Sure.
because as you know. Sometimes geocaches are not quality and they're just like, just, I don't know, there's not a lot of thought put into it.
Yeah.
We like to really think through something and find a really good location. And then it gets favorite points, and then more people wanna go hiking, and it's a nice cycle.
Yeah.
And then the other thing I don't think you mentioned, but, so sometimes geocaches are there for super long times, I think there's ones that been 10+ years. And our thought is, if the committee is open to something, we could do it as a trial run and see if it's maintained well, or if it disturbs anything else. Like we could do it for fall season or whatever is good. And then if it doesn't work out, that was a fun experience.
Yeah. Yeah, I think the other question that comes up is, just there are times a year where the trails close out at Catamount. Throughout mud season, and I think late fall as well, sometimes if it gets too wet, certain trail.
Yeah,
Well, there are races and stuff like that going on at certain times.
yeah, I mean, most of that can be avoided. I mean, we can separate the uses. The courses are not, so. Impactful that we couldn't find a place to do it.
Yeah,
And then in terms of the closures, I mean, really the main one is spring.
yeah,
As long as we're not citing it on a trail that's historically wet.
that makes sense.
And as we are improving those will become less of a problem too, so. I don't see it as a huge, other than spring,
Right.
being a draw.
Does the app allow you to put notes about the site, so you could say, avoid or trail,
Check the
access
website
trail,
to
right,
see if
yeah,
the trails are
before
open,
spring.
yeah.
And I have the ability to turn it off or say it's
Yeah.
not available.
Yeah, we could make it so it's not available in the spring and people cannot get it in the spring so that they don't like disturb the trails
Mhm.
while they're muddy.
So what do we do to make the, what do we need to do for going forward? What's the next step?
Well, I think next step, we could set up another meeting just to kind of iron out an agreement, and I think about a location with help from John. I think with something like this, the wildlife concerns aren't probably too much, but we do know, we were just out there today with some folks from the state looking at vernal pools and deer wintering areas, so there are some places that would probably be good to avoid.
Yeah,
And I think with John's help, we could probably identify, some durable access trails that would give you the most opportunity for access through the year.
okay, that sounds, we are definitely open to any suggestions. We like building them. So we could build a different one, or we could go with the one you just saw, but open to suggestions. And then, as you might know, like, it could go in a lot of different places, and there's a lot of very cool locations on that property.
Yeah.
So it doesn't necessarily need to be on a trail. We could also do, is it the south side? Is it the one that you're overlooking the mountains with the speed chair?
Yes.
The south side, that it looks like less muddy, but open to suggestions.
Yeah.
Yeah, all right. Well, let us know your thoughts.
Yeah.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, that's a great idea.
That was the question I was gonna ask is, I don't know what kind of wildlife is up there to make something, you want it up high or you keep it down low?
Yeah,
That's
so
a good point.
there's different.
I've seen deer, that's only I've really seen there myself.
Yeah, so we can set it up, we were talking about, like, again, so many different ways we could do it as suggestions, but, if we didn't wanna actually put it into a tree, we could, use some knots and the paracord to go around a branch. Or we could put a stake in the ground, and the goal is that people could reach it. So, yeah, and not get eaten by deer.
Or like be going through tall grass or something
Yeah.
potentially to not be in the thick.
Fix.
Got one today.
Oh, yeah.
It's spring.
All right, great.
All right,
So yeah, I'll give you a follow-up, and I assume, John, you're going to be maybe in the conversation about maybe where to locate it. So we could maybe set up a meeting.
Yeah.
to Further talk about and, yeah, anyone who's welcome to, or interested in joining in from the committee, but seems like the overall reception is favorable.
I wonder if there's some in the other town parks. Who's on conservation, I wonder.
Not that I know of, but I'm just 1 month into my position, so it's possible that they're out there.
Actually, the only one that I've ever gone to was on Sucker Hollow.
yeah,
Okay.
Yeah, Sucker Brook Hollow, so
There you go.
I know the answer.
Yeah.
There you go. There's at least one.
yeah, the cat's got some.
Yeah.
But there's none at Catamount, which makes it kind of exciting,
Yeah,
so,
good idea.
yeah. All right, well, thanks for the consideration.
Yeah,
Yeah,
thanks for coming in.
And thanks for us experiencing a committee meeting.
yeah.
You're welcome to stay.
It's exciting.
It's,
Thanks.
I think your camera's fantastic.
That's the coolest thing about it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the
At least
coolest.
we use one for one of our meetings too.
Yeah, I gotta get one of those. All right, I will let you guys.
Well, maybe you wanna hear the Catamount Family Center updates while you're here, you can probably listen.
What kind of updates?
You don't have to.
Okay.
You're welcome to.
So Harold, just to give you a quick rundown on our agenda, because I think I may have slipped my mind to share that with you. Yeah, we're gonna do an update from Catamount Outdoor Family Center. And then do a very quick check-in on any upcoming events. And then talk about the mowing.
Yeah, okay.
That work for you?
Yeah.
All right.
My turn. So we have a building planning meeting next week with our designers to look at designs.
They have pictures for you.
Yeah, really
Of
exciting.
course, yes. So we're really excited about that and it's something that, we've been working hard at for a long time to get to this point. As soon as we have stuff that we can share, it's gonna go out to this committee, to the town planners, to the Vermont Land Trust, and to the McCulloughs as just sort of an initial review so that we can make sure that everybody's on the same page and that we're not going down a road that we won't get approval for. So as soon as we can share that, we will. I did read a really neat article in the Wilson Observer this past week about the history of the property. I don't know if everybody caught that.
Yeah, I did too. I was used to me, so.
And that was a reprint, I guess. It was an older article that had been used before, but one of the things that really struck me, I heard that there was 17 buildings on the property at one point.
Yeah.
And so I went out and I asked our local historian, Jim. I said, what is going on with this? 17 buildings, where were these? The event field was covered with buildings. So there was a big L-shaped barn there. Several buildings that were out in the middle of the field, and then all the way over to the sheep barn. And like, so you couldn't see the sheep barn from the road. So there is history of buildings on that site. So I felt like that was a good, in fact, you can go out and still see foundation stones in the field. Today, we actually, somebody was like, oh, look, here's some bedrock. I was like, that's not bedrock. That was put there. So it was a bit of a, kind of reminder of all the uses that have happened on the property and that we're not hopefully asking for something that's, really out of range. This is, something that's been there before. We're also deep in our trail planning right now, and as Dave referenced, we had a meeting today with FPR wildlife biologists to review some vernal pools that were out there and the deer wintering areas. We engaged with TC Bowman, which has been involved with the conservation project initially, and Jeremy Matowski, who was the former owner of TCE, was on the board for several years. So these are folks that are intimately aware of the property. And their wetlands person actually went out and found 3 more wetlands that were not known to be on the property. And we shared those today with the wildlife biologist, and so that was a neat, forward movement for awareness of what's on the property. Fortunately, none of them None of the new ones are really, in a place that impacts our plans. But certainly, very good to know where they are and their overall health. Some of the other, the other two wetlands that we knew were there, are somewhat created by the trails themselves. So there were borrow pits dug to build up the trail, and then now we have a depression. So that's why the one that is on Sandman's is so close to the trail. And because it was, the ground was moved. So certainly we don't want to go back in there and fill them up. But that is why it is so close. In terms of the deer wintering areas, the places that have been cut for the forestry experiment, those he still really thought of as deer wintering areas. The browse was apparent, the piles of poop were there, and then noting that the edges of that area are still very much hemlock and white pine and what is considered deer wintering. So it may not be perfect, but it is still considered deer wintering. But he also noted that the use of that area has not scared the deer away. They have found a way to coexist there, and he's not necessarily going to be asking us to remove or move trails from that area. That was a question at one point. It was like, hey, could you close that trail? And we're like, that's the one that's the most popular. So Sandman.
For deer?
Yes. Well, no, for everybody.
Uh.
No, close it in the winter.
Because of the deer wintering?
Because of the deer winter. But, all of the uses that have happened out there, the deer are able to coexist and we're feeling better about that piece of it. To move into a little more internal stuff, we started our summer staff training this past weekend and we had 25 staff out. It was great to see how excited they were to work together, and we had, all the new people were jazzed up, and it was great to see all that happen. We have our spring launch party this weekend, and our gravel ride. So that's a new event for us, and we're hoping that goes off really well. We also have the Vermont Youth Cycling Scrimmage next weekend. And then on Tuesday, we kick off our race series. So Tuesday and Wednesdays, going from now until the middle of October, we'll have races. We're mowing like crazy. It's raining and things are growing. Yeah.
Do you have a calendar out for your races yet?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, they're out at our event calendar is.
Okay.
Well maintained.
I need to see a copy so we can do our planning around it too, so.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's a quick update of where we are. Yeah. Anybody have questions, concerns, comments?
That's good.
Good progress.
Harold, I can send you an email with the event calendar and that.
Okay.
Days for you. Happy to do that.
Will there be maps updated for the new wetlands areas?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, all the delineations, all the vernal pools, all that will be updated.
Okay.
And that'll be good for 5 years. And then we'll need to be updated if we want to use it for permitting beyond that. It still will be information that's valuable beyond that if we don't have to update for permits, but that's how long those delineations last.
And so by wetlands, we're talking about vernal pools.
No, those are separate but overlapping sometimes.
And more protected than wetlands, or no?
Is that an accurate way of describing it? I mean, it's there.
Yeah, I mean, the sort of your average wetland of decent quality that qualifies as a class 2 wetland would get a 50-foot buffer. Your average vernal pool of decent quality, a natural pool that isn't man-made, that can support a large population of breeding amphibians will potentially, depending on its size and quality, they have other rules that can extend that buffer further. We always saw, a bunch of the pools that we visited today were kind of marginal quality, these ones that have been created in the past from a borrow pit or a farm pond or something, but now we're operating as a vernal pool. those had maybe 5 to 10 egg masses versus the one that we visited that was most likely natural had about 50 salamander egg masses and 50 wood frog egg masses. So sort of an order of magnitude higher in terms of the support that it has for breeding amphibians. So they'd probably treat that different, kind of similar to the situation with the deer wintering areas where, Noel took a look at, we were maybe 100 feet off the side of the trail and there was, piles of deer poop and evidence of them, using their incisors to scrape trees, and so he said it'd be a very different situation if a brand new trail was being proposed through a deer wintering area. But here you clearly had deer that have been using this place for a long time and were doing so just off the side of the trail. So the evidence there wasn't suggesting that the trails were impacting their ability to continue using that resource. So hopefully, it seemed like they were responsive to the conditions of those resources based on what I saw today.
And the high quality vernal pool that we did, which was a new one, was well off of the trails and not gonna be impacting any of these larger buffers, so it should be well protected where it is now. Right. Cool.
All right.
And none of them are places that you.
Hope not.
Yeah. We talked about how often there must have been sucked vehicles out there with the amount of use that was out in those areas, way back in the day.
On the other side, or?
Yeah, on the other side, yeah, that, I mean, it was clear cut, and they had farm fields out there. They must have been wet fields.
Yeah. Well, you notice that a little bit too every now and then, like I said, since we started haying up there. There used to be, well, it was the west side, I would call it the west side. On the bottom where it makes, kind of goes around the rocks and then goes back along the fence line. That used to be damp, and if it got a lot of rain, you had to leave it. But now over the course of the years, whether we've broken the mat by doing the cropping there, that the water can penetrate down through now, it's not as wet as it used to be. So, I think there was a layer of old grass that. Like you're aerating it yourself now with doing the cropping, so.
So these are this is the events calendar.
Yep, so yeah, just a quick check-in that nothing here has changed since last time, except that we have full details for these 3 events that were organized by Terry Marin. There's North Branch Nature Center is visiting in Green Mountain Audubon Society. And then there's a Williston Library birdwalk. And so got all that information and sent it along to Amanda. So it's all posted on the website. And each of these events are under 20 people. So there's no special considerations in terms of safety or anything like that. So really qualifies as normal use, which makes it, significantly easier.
I'm excited for these. All right.
Yeah.
And then 5. Well, okay, so then our priority discussion, we are ahead of schedule here.
We'll see when Kim comes, maybe we can take some time to do the minutes or reclaim some time at the end.
Although I wasn't at the meeting to actually verify if the minutes happened, right?
Kim was here last
Yeah,
time.
she was-
Yeah. Yeah, fortunately, so
Okay.
we'll see. I did notice, I think we have a caller. 802-373-6965. I don't know if you
That's
can hear.
Nicholas.
Oh, that's Nicholas. Okay, great. Welcome, Nicholas. Glad you could be here as well.
Yeah, thank you.
All right. Well, yeah, thank you again, Harold and Nicholas, for coming. I think it's a great opportunity to get a chance for folks to meet. Some cases, people haven't had a chance to meet before. So there's a couple members of the committee here today. Myself as a conservation planner for the town, John representing Catamount Outdoor Family Center, and then Carl Runge is a longtime member of the Green Mountain Audubon Bobolink Monitoring Group that has been monitoring the birds out in Field C for many years. So Yeah, so I think it's a great opportunity to have a little bit of discussion. Harold and Nicholas and I had a chat about a week ago where I, presented the proposal from the Bobolink monitoring group to consider changing the dates on the mowing schedule out there in Field C. And so I figured just a good opportunity, Harold, if you wanted to kind of explain to the group your perspective on that, and then I know that you also had a bunch of other
Yeah.
potential requests, and
I should have written them down, I didn't, but.
I've got a
Oh.
list of the trees and ledges, so we can talk about those too. And
Yeah,
it
okay,
seems like most people I've talked to, there's some questions about how we might do those, but it seems like there's probably an arrangement we can come to.
yeah, that's, well, I guess
Hey,
today I can, go ahead.
David, could I interrupt for a minute?
Yes.
Could you get the picture of the group back on so I could see everybody?
Are you just seeing the
I just
map?
had a little thumbnail here of everybody. That's
How
yeah,
about now? Is that
that's
better?
Now I can hear and see it better. Thanks.
Okay, sure. Yeah, no, you're welcome.
Well, today I thought, well, I printed off from the Audubon about the bobolink project. It was, see if there's anything I didn't really know about it before, but nothing new, I guess, to me. I know when Jim McCullough first presented it to me, he applied for it. But he goes, I know it's gonna cost you money because the quality of the feed will not be there. Yeah, if we have to wait till towards August to do the hay in there, that's bedding, that's worthless. So then do I take my time and equipment, invest into cropping it? So that's why we would like to do, and which I printed off today from there, I see. You can do a delayed second cut between, so if there's no disturbance in the field between May 20th and July 24th, there was very minimal disturbance to the bobolinks and the sparrows. And we would like to keep it that way, because that way at least we get a quality of first cut. And the delay of the second cut, we can still use that as for heifer feed. It's not totally useless. And we try to get the first cut off by the middle of May anyway, Al. And well, this year's starting off a little slow, not getting a lot of hot weather right away, and so hopefully we can get it mowed off before May 20th and have it picked up. And I think I looked on the calendar over there. May that's a Tuesday. So.
I think it's a Monday or Tuesday this year.
Yeah, 20th is a Tuesday.
No, thanks for responding to that. I think it's good to have everyone here, kind of your response and perspective on that.
Yeah,
I think so. Yeah, I think with that, obviously the town wants to work with you, and the bobolink monitoring folks. We know that field is a priority for bobolinks, but they also want to try to work with you. And so the second proposal that came up was this idea, is it possible to get a mow that's a little bit earlier? And Carl proposed May 15th. When we were discussing, you mentioned that it's, the weather can present a challenge, in some years you might be able to do that, in some years you might not.
Yeah.
So one of the questions, or one of the sort of ways we're thinking about it is, if there might be a way to word it in the lease, rather than being specific about, May 15th or not, just clarifying the intention, which the intention is a compromise between getting the earliest viable mow that you can and getting that mow in as early as possible, so that the bobolinks can have the max amount of time for the grass to grow up. And Carl was explaining to me that the hope is even just moving it a couple days earlier means that by the time they nest, the grass is that much higher, and that means that the birds are safer from predators.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't know if you have any thoughts about that. Obviously, there's a point where you have to, I imagine you've got to wait until the grass gets to a minimum height.
We like to, yeah, to make optimum use of
Yeah,
our time doing that, yeah.
so I'm wondering if you could just tell us a little bit about, what the kind of range is that you've experienced in spring. What is a good year where the grass grows fast and the weather's good? What's the kind of earliest you could imagine cutting, in a tough year where it's cooler and slower and wetter? What does it look like in terms of trying?
Well, if it stays cooler and it grows slower than the other, I think it will probably mature, but it will be not a lot of quantity there.
Mhm.
So it might be anyway, just mowed off. So the second cut can get a chance to come back. Because as we kind of look for quality versus quantities most times.
The 20th
think-
is a pretty decent date for us as well because the way we handle double cropping or cover
Right,
crops
yeah.
in our rye, like by the 20th we want that off because that's starting to mature anyways to get our corn on that ground. So like the 20th is a pretty easy date for us to normally hit. Some years like last year it was the way the spring ran, it was really good quality and quantity versus this year. It'll be good quality. The quantity, the volume may not quite be there, but that 15th to the 20th, we got no issues trying to be earlier whenever possible. But, some years we may just want to wait till the 20th just to try and get a little more. Like this year, it'll probably be the 19th. We'll push it as far, as earliest, but as far as we can.
Yeah, like I said today, we usually don't work Sundays, so then we'll probably either mow on Saturday but then depends how wet it is. It probably wouldn't be, most likely be Monday we mow this year, I would say.
The 16th.
The 19th.
Oh, I'm looking at June.
And then by Tuesday afternoon, it'd all be picked up.
Yeah, Tuesday afternoon would be all
know we
gone.
were there.
Yeah, well, I appreciate that, both the explanation and kind of what the variation looks like in a given year and also the willingness to be flexible. Carl, I'm kind of curious to hear from, the perspective of the monitoring group that proposed these different potential compromises. What would it sound like to you to, move towards a sort of language in the lease that reflects that kind of flexible window of, aiming for an early cut, May 15th, knowing that, May 20 is kind of the other end of that threshold, remains the other end of that threshold.
Well, first, let me tell you a little bit about the bobolinks themselves and their schedule. The males appear. This is the week that the males appear, and as a matter of fact, this year they have appeared. They've been seen for the first time on Tuesday, and we were out this morning, and we saw a couple more today. So the first male bobolinks are coming, and this is the week where they come. The females don't show up until later. They arrive about the last week in May, and by the time they get here, they're kind of hot to start building nests. So we expect to see nest building in early June, and they need a bare minimum of 4 inches of grass to nest. They will nest anywhere from 4 inches to 65 inches. But the shorter the grass is, the more open they are to predators. So that's the reason that we've all these years that we've been trying to work out good schedules for them. So if you end up mowing at May, I really appreciate the fact that on our last couple of contracts that May 20th has been the date, because that works out, kind of barely works out for the bobolinks nesting schedule, but it does work out, and you have mowed, and you haven't gone over that in the last since we've had the contracts with the town. And in fact, I think a couple of springs you haven't been able to mow that field C at all. I think 20,
Yeah.
2020 and 2022, you weren't able to mow it at all because of weather. So what David has described that we're working toward will work out fine for us, as far as I'm concerned. That we have a strict cutoff date of May 20th. But if you can get it done before May 20th, better. If you get it done by May 15th, that'd be great. If you can get it done between May 15th and 20th, that's good too. And as far as the second mowing, the bobolinks need 65 days minimum for their breeding season from mowing to mowing. So that in either case, if you had you could get a second mowing in after July 24th, that would work even for the May 20th. So
Yes, well, they used to tell us we couldn't mow it till the 1st of May or August, sorry.
yeah, I know.
And then we've been there, we did the second cut, and then I get a phone call. Oh, you could have mowed that field. Like, we would have known.
Well, that's the reason for that is that we set that August 1st date because we didn't know how long they were going to be sticking around on the field. So
Sure.
the years where we saw that they were well fledged and able to fly on their own and could get off the field, those are the days we called and said, you can come in earlier if you want.
Okay.
We could set it. I mean, I think we'd be pretty safe to set a date of July 24th or 25th, because we see that they're fledged anywhere between July 8th and 25th. I mean that they're not quite independent yet, but but I think a date of second mowing of July 24th or 25th would work out.
So Carl, here's a question for you. So we're talking about trying to make this arrangement more clear in terms of its intentions rather than just, because sometimes when you throw out a number or just a date, over time, people can kind of forget maybe why that was proposed in the first place. And so I think it was really helpful understanding that, okay, we have this flexible window in the spring for these reasons. I'm wondering if it might make sense to have, in the agreement, maybe some flexible language, like, the monitoring program is going to continue monitoring. And based on what you see, right, you will know when the birds have fledged, correct? In a given year?
Correct.
So would it make sense to, perhaps try to craft some language saying, the field will definitely not be mowed between May 20 and July 24. And then something along the lines of, when the birds have fledged and it's safe to mow the field, the monitoring program will communicate that it's okay to mow the field.
Yeah, that's kind of what we've been doing the last couple of years.
Yeah.
Right. But right now the language in the lease is strict to August 1st. So
yeah, I know. And that can be shortened.
I'm trying to think of something more eloquent, but basically the idea being, just like we would say, this May 15 to 20 window is the target for the spring, we could say there's a July 24 to August 1st window, for that second cut, depending on conditions.
Yeah.
Well, that'll be fine by us.
Okay.
Does that seem reasonable?
Sure. Yeah.
All right. Great.
Another thing to note, you talked about the height of the grass being. So the way our mowers are set up, so the mowers don't cut lower than like 3 inches. We tend to cut at that 3 to 4 already anyways, just because, just like, you want that grass to come back for the birds. Same, if we cut any lower than that, if we cut too low, we kind of have a potential to
Dirt.
damage is not quite, yeah, well, dirt, Not even
Sure.
damaging the clear, but to the rhizome of the grass that would impede, slow its regrowth. So like we tend to we try to cut it at 3 to 4 inches anyways already. So like when May 20th comes along, you know, your grass is already at your, you know, pretty close to your minimum that you're looking for to begin with to help with them as well.
Well, that's good, and I think that's helped us over the years as far as the bobolinks are concerned.
Great.
Thanks for pointing that out. That's helpful to
Yeah.
know.
So after, well, first of all, thank you. Yeah, thank you all for participating in the conversation. I think this has been really helpful in terms of illustrating what both of the goals are for the field and how they might meet in the middle. After our conversation, Harold and Nicholas, I spoke to the town manager about the situation this year. We talked about how the lease is kind of expiring at an inopportune time because it's not giving us as much time as would be desired to kind of have discussions. So what we proposed is a 2-month extension of the existing lease, just so that there's a chance to get out there and operate this year. And you know, you mentioned the goal being that May 19th cut, so that would fit in with the current lease. And that would give us basically that 2-month extension would just give us time to have the conversations around any of these other questions that you wanted to potentially bring up in terms of altering the lease. So for example, right now the lease says no cutting of trees, but we wanted to have a conversation about whether it might be appropriate to amend that lease so we can have cutting up certain dead trees that might pose a safety hazard, things like that. So does that sound reasonable in terms of a 2-month extension of the existing lease?
The current lease expires when? 1st of May, won't it?
1st of May, so it's currently expired, yeah.
So it's, yeah, so technically, I only give you this 1st of July.
Yeah, so, but with the intention being that we would, in the meantime, we would sign a new 3-year lease after that would, and we'd set the end date, Nicholas's suggestion, you know, at a reasonable time of December 31st.
Yeah, I thought we talked about doing calendar year.
Yeah, calendar year, so that when the lease ends, there's ample time to have any conversation.
Right,
about that.
right.
Yeah.
So if that sounds good, Eric's actually left me with a lease since you're here today, Harold, just for convenience. So if that sounds reasonable, there's a lease agreement extension here. It literally just says the town of Williston and Harold D. Graff agree to extend the terms of the appended lease agreement to June 30th, 2025. And that would mean that you can go out and do the May cut this year. And then we'll have time. Of course, we can continue the conversation now, but if we need more time or we need to get out to.
Can that be extended again because in order to get to the calendar year or?
Well, I think that the.
No, I think.
Oh yeah, go ahead, Nicholas.
Say, weren't we talking like, so the new lease, it would start whenever, like June, call it June 30th, just for sake of, you know, we've got this lease extension of the current one. And because it's 3 years, so it would go through like December 31st of 2028 or something like that. So it wouldn't quite be like, it'd be like a 2.5-year lease agreement instead of the full 3, just to get us to that correct end date. So that way we're not in the middle of a season trying to sort out a lease. The lease extension is more or less my understanding from you, David, is just so that way the town has something to cover both of us, that we have an agreement in place before this new one is signed. So that way nobody feels rushed to get this one done and maybe have something left out or missed that we wish was in there or something.
Exactly. Yeah, I couldn't explain it better. Is that, yeah, that's exactly. This would just be a temporary stopover, and then we sign the 3-year lease or the 2.5-year lease for them. Yeah, cool. Okay, so we can do that before you go. There's no rush or anything like that. Great. So that was the initial conversation around the bobolink field, and then there were another.
I have one question on that. Yeah. Does the town get compensated for that? Because it says they compensate
The town does not. So the way the bottling program, the national program works is they enroll larger fields. In the field out there doesn't qualify for the official program. It's too small. And I don't think they do municipalities. They do private farms only. Is that right, Carl? Is that your understanding with the National Bottling Project?
Yeah, that's my understanding, but I'm not 100% sure of that.
Yeah.
No, I know Jim
Yeah,
talked
so
about
this
it.
one,
But in
yeah,
any
go ahead,
case,
Dad.
the field C is probably too small. They probably would not accept it. It's they are
Small,
pretty
big
fairly
acres.
strict on accepting fields over 10 acres,
Okay,
and I think that's a little under it.
Yeah.
And
It's
are we clear on, before we get off the mowing thing, that this only applies to field C, fields A and B, you can mow later?
yes.
Yeah, yeah.
Good.
okay. Great. Okay, so we still have plenty of time. We may not get through all the conversation points, but with this temporary lease extension, we'll have an opportunity to continue the conversation.
Yeah, okay.
Even if it's not all contained in these meetings. But we can make sure that we're trying to pull in as many people as possible to participate as might be needed. So Harold or Nicholas, did you want to introduce the various ideas, or I've got a list of them: the trees, ledges, reseeding, manure injection, and potentially expanding the area mode. Do you want to
Okay,
talk about
I
those?
can. Yeah, so I guess we'll start with the trees. I know, so in field, I guess I consider it part of field B. As you come up out of field A and you climb the ridge there, at the bottom of field B to the right-hand side where the ski lift chair is, there's like that pair.
There's a little crop
Yeah,
out
there's
there.
that.
Anything around here?
No,
No.
No, over on.
no, up to
Towards the
A,
center.
up to A.
Up to over an A. Sorry, I don't know.
Right here.
Oh, thank you. Appreciate it.
There's a pair of dead trees that trucks. I think they've been just about dead for as long as we've been up there. And for two things that come to mind. One for us is, as the size of our equipment gets bigger, a little more challenging to get around them. We do. But two, just thinking like, as we think in, because it's not just us utilizing the land, all the people that are out there, and the trails and everything that go around them, like these two trees, like we just feel like, one, they present a hazard to people interacting on the land, that we feel like it would be best if they could be removed somehow. That was the trees that really came to mind that had issues. I know there was one other spot where there was a tree that there is no longer. I think it did finally fall down on its own.
Okay. So top of field A.
Yeah, it's up on the incline as you go up, yeah.
Does anyone have any thoughts or questions about?
Who would be responsible for clearing those trees out?
Somebody,
Yeah,
question.
you're asking, was that a question? I'm sorry.
Yeah,
You're
that's a
asking
question.
who would be responsible?
Yeah, yeah.
Are you asking for permission to do it yourself, or would you is the town capable?
Right.
Well,
That's a good question.
Are they a problem for people who go up there? Is it?
Not currently, but
Yeah.
I mean, I think that, they're not necessarily, useful either. It's not like, people are going up to look at the dead tree.
Yeah.
I
They
mean,
are useful for the birds though, right?
they are they do provide some habitat, but I don't think it's those two trees were not there, I don't think the overall habitat value of the area would be dramatically changed.
Are these
Yes.
standing trees or are they downed?
Are they?
One-
They're what? They're still.
One,
Go
one,
ahead.
one is cracked, I think.
They're still standing, Carl.
I think one is standing, the other one's cracked, I think.
I haven't seen them yet this year. I didn't go up there when we fertilized.
Okay.
So,
Well,
but
that might be a first sort of consideration. Just get out there, take a look. I know. So one person who couldn't be with us today, who's often at these meetings and a member of the extended, Catamount communities, Terry Marin, was previously on the committee and has done a lot of work with the bird monitoring groups, had sent me a couple notes and questions, and suggested that, for the ledges and for the tree, for a couple of these things, it might be good to just get a group of people. Maybe we go up together and
Yeah.
and take a look and
Maybe that's something we can do after we crop it so you can see them better.
yeah, exactly. Terry's only thought was that at some point for example, with the ledges, the grass is going to grow up and hide them. Right now it's a little easier to see them.
Yeah,
But I thought that was a good proposal. It just makes sense maybe to try to get out there together and to take a look at the different issues on the landscape, as there's only so much you can learn from aerial photos.
right.
But yeah, I haven't come across anyone in conversation who would be vehemently opposed to potentially removing the trees. I think, the argument for trees is that they do provide wildlife values. Birds will use dead trees for various reasons. As they decay, they have insects in them that are food, and they can be perching spots. But there's also an argument against, as you note, as dead trees get older, they do provide a safety hazard. And as John notes, the overall contribution to the wildlife value out there is probably not necessarily too significant, unless there's some other concern. So I think it's reasonable to consider it, and maybe when it comes to the lease, currently the lease is specific on this. It says no removal of trees. So maybe in terms of the lease, it's just a matter of saying
If necessary.
yeah, or if necessary, or under special consideration, an agreement of all parties or something along those lines. Just modifying it to be flexible.
yeah, and total respect for that. Like there was one. I think it was last year we talked about on the upper field. There was this branch that was like leaning and cracked, and it's like couldn't believe that they still were putting a bike path underneath it, and then it finally finally let go on its own, and it was like, okay, well, what happened to somebody who was going underneath that thing when it finally let go? So it'd be nice to have some flexibility, be like, hey, we got this concern with this tree doing this, or like some of those things. Like we're not looking to go through and say, hey, we want to cut all this out or whatever. That's not really our goal, but to have some flexibility in the language to say, hey, we think we have this potential issue or whatever that, can we have a discussion about it and come to an agreement or a plan on how to move forward with it, instead of just
having it be
being all
fully prohibited.
Yeah.
Okay.
And the other area we talked about with you, David, was right here. See, you can see there's a ledge right there,
Mm-hmm.
and then there's a tree right there. So we talked about getting rid of that ledge at some point. Because we can mow on one side of it, but we can't get the feed after we mow it unless you go over the rocks with it.
Oh, I see. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, so we can talk about the ledges. Do you want to tell us about kind of what that entails, removing ledges?
Well, Nicholas knows more about it than I do. I guess there's somebody that has a rock crusher behind a tractor. And I don't know what they charge. Go ahead.
So yeah, so it's really like more or less like a rototiller. honestly, like when someone rototills their garden, you know, you're turning the dirt, except it's got carbide teeth, and so, you know, you're looking, you know, it can go anywhere. It's probably going 6 to 8 inches, maybe 12 inches at the most. You'd be going down, and you're just taking that, you know, you're not digging up these big holes, you know, to like dig out this rock with a jackhammer and all this stuff. You know, it's just like rototilling the top of it off. That's all it's doing. You know, so it's minimal disturbance. But yeah, for us, you know, big safety to the machinery like the mowers and the cutter bars. You know, the ledge. If you catch a ledge, you can do anywhere from at least $1,500 to $2,000, upwards to $6,000-7,000 of damage to a single mower head if you happen to catch a piece of ledge wrong or something.
Yeah, I mentioned Terry Marin sent me some comments, and Terry thought that the manure injection idea was a really great idea, but also pointed out that the ledges, you know, could potentially damage that equipment. So yeah, it makes sense. I think it's a reasonable request. The one thing to note is that it already is currently in the lease, that is an allowed use, and in the lease, it gives a cutoff of 500 square feet. So no ledges larger than 500 square feet would be ground down. And
Oh, that's, Nicholas said you mentioned 500 square feet.
yeah, that's the language in the lease. And you know, I did
You can go deep as you want.
You're right, it doesn't say anything about that.
It's not cubic, it's square footage, not cubic.
The square foot, go as far down as you want.
Yeah, so I did want to talk to one other person I thought might know the origin of that, but you know, I'd imagine that the idea is just, you know, if there are ledges out there that have aesthetic value, or you know, they're just particularly large, that they're kind of part of the topography, it's probably good to set some sort of cutoff.
Well, I noticed last year on the field B, when they set the course up, you can see on the, well, against the west side, I would call it. There's some ledges there, and somebody, they made their track around the ledges. But it's fine with me. I don't have to mow it.
Does anyone ever go out to that area of field A? I've never been out there.
People do run
Like
around
that
it.
back
Oh, yeah,
corner.
Yeah, of course.
There's
There's
a
access
trail
from
out there.
houses there too. Lots of people use that, and
Yeah, I've seen that right from the yellow house in the corner.
and we use those trails for riding on
Okay.
and hiking. And they're very popular. That's where some of the best views are. It's one of the nicer spots in the forest for sure.
I've never been there. What happens to the rock that's been ground down? Does that get removed, or is it just,
I would think it would just
No.
make it.
it doesn't?
It literally, it just turns it into topsoil, more or less, dirt. You know,
Depends how fine it grinds it.
nothing. You're grinding it into like topsoil dirt. Like nothing's being removed. You know, you're not grinding this up and taking it away. Then you got to bring in material to fill in a hole. You know, it's literally like you're rototilling your garden. You go through and you look behind you, see a rototilled path. You know, nothing is being excavated out of anything. You know,
So would you be
It's the
seeding that area after it's ground down?
Try to make
yeah,
grass
then we'd
grow.
reseed it with
Try to make
grass.
grow in
Yeah.
rocks, unless it's
He's
really
saying
that
it's
fine.
ground down to topsoil, so I don't.
Yeah, I don't know. I've
Is there
never
some-
seen it, so I don't know.
Yeah.
Would putting down hay or hay bales even in there be another option to cover that up?
After you seed it,
Well, even if the crusher, you know, grinder is too expensive, could you put enough hay bales there to sort of bring the ground up over so you could float, you know, 18 inches above it? Or is that not really gonna
No.
work? And then the second question was, after you do the grind, if you threw some hay down, you would create more of a
you get some organic matter to it.
right, and then things could start to grow there.
It's possible, yeah. I have never seen the final product of what comes out of it.
You're proposing though
Yeah.
a site visit, right?
I'm proposing a site visit, yeah, and that was Terry's, I can't take full credit for it, it was Terry's idea. So, yeah, maybe, I think it probably would be a good idea just for the people in this room to get an idea of what these ledges, look like, what does a 500 square foot ledge look like, and, are there some examples that we could identify that are clearly maybe, um, not a good idea to grind versus the kind that regularly impact the equipment.
And I guess my last question would be, what is the benefit of that small corner in terms of hay for you as sort of a cost benefit?
It's more to keep it near looking for the
Maintain.
Catamount too. We
This
can make it
corner-
around
Where are
one
we-
way.
Are you talking about this corner, Drew?
No, where the
No,
ledge
the
is,
other one.
where the ledge is.
No,
Oh,
down here.
down there.
Yeah.
Yeah, sorry, right.
So, what would happen if you just didn't go down there, I guess is the question.
Well, I could mow it and just leave it, but
Yeah,
if you mow it, you kind of hate to leave it.
okay.
Right. It's true.
You're,
I guess
where are you
that's-
talking? You're talking the farthest point up, but towards Field C.
Yeah, by the yellow house there in the
Views
corner.
where you're-
Down in
No, Field A.
lower left
Oh,
corner there.
over there. In Field. Oh, that's Field A. Okay.
Field C is the birds.
Yeah, yeah. Field B is the one in the middle, down at the bottom of the hill.
Yeah.
I was
Yeah.
thinking that was Field A, and the one on top was Field C.
Okay. Yeah, I guess the other questions that come to mind are just kind of what would be, how disruptive would it be in terms of like, would you want to wait until fall after the races kind of thing? What would be the ideal time of year to do this? And think questions.
Yeah,
like that,
right, yeah.
Just logistics. So in terms of the
So
lease.
it could be
Oh, go ahead, Nicholas.
like done any time of year. There's no like more or less time of year that's better or worse, to complete this task other than, we're willing to work around the timeline of Catamount, and then with all the people there, it's probably better to be done during a slow season. And everything
so
just from that standpoint.
You would acquire the equipment that you need to do that yourself, or is there
We
some
would-
other party that?
Correct.
That'd be another party.
One or the other, yes. But it would be something that we would undertake as the farm, as the leasee, not asking the leaseor to do this.
Yeah.
It's all, same with, I guess you go back to those trees, like we have no issues maintaining and managing things like that. We do that on our own land as it is already, as when it's required. None of these things, I guess we're looking and saying to the town, hey, we want you to do this for us. We're like, these are things that we are willing and capable and have the ability to do, that we're not asking you to bear the cost of it, because
Yeah.
this is for us, it's our
Right.
way of managing land, and two, trying to leave it better than how we found it, so to speak.
Right.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
most of these ledges like that we talk about, like they're not these huge outcroppings, it's all of a sudden you got this little point that sticks up that's maybe like a 2 foot by 2 foot area. So you talk about, you talk about, the dirt around, there's all this topsoil around it that's getting incorporated in. Like it's not like you're trying to make something grow out of just rock, whatever, there's still all the dirt around there that's getting incorporated into it. So it wouldn't be much for grass to regrow through that after being seeded down.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Understood.
It's not like top of Field B there along the edge where we go, like there's like these huge ledge outcroppings. We're not like looking to say, hey, we want to take these out so we can farm more of this or whatever. That's not what we're looking for. We're just looking to be able to better operate and utilize the land that we currently lease.
Yeah. So it sounds like, and I guess Nicholas, you're calling in, so you can't necessarily see this, but for anyone else who is here, let me close this. It sounds from this conversation like the current language in the lease may not need to be amended. It currently says, 0.6, the following modification to existing topography is allowed. DGRAF is permitted to use a rock crushing device attached to the rear of his tractor to pulverize small rock outcroppings in fields A and B. Rock outcroppings larger than 500 square feet must not be modified in any way. DGRAF may also cut saplings encroaching into mowed fields. So just, for the sake of kind of expediency, it sounds like there are some questions around logistics for this. But in terms of the lease agreement, it kind of sounds from this discussion that the current language is sufficient. Does that?
Yeah, the logistics is solely on our end and how we, and how we get it done. Like
Right.
that's our problem, so to speak.
Right. Well, and just
we
a community communication thing, as you mentioned, just working around other considerations like the races and stuff. But yeah, okay.
Yeah. Same with like the manure. So back when we worked with Jim, back when Jim owned it, like the only time we would ever spread was in like middle to end of October after Catamount
yeah, the end of October, he goes, oh, this is my last race. He goes, you can do whatever you want after that. So, but we never got manure up there because at the time we weren't injecting. We were just, we were spreading on top. We weren't injecting.
Yeah, because at the time we didn't have injectors, but now we do.
Now we do.
Right. So,
and now we just cut a little.
I just had a question.
Injectors.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
I just wanted to ask about the injection process and what impacts it might have on trails and whether that would churn up the surface of the trail and make it muddier potentially or.
I'm currently injecting as we're speaking here. So the way injection works is you cut this little slot in the ground. Some use knives. We have what they call disc injectors, vertical till injectors. They just have a disc that wiggles a little slot in the ground as you make a path, and it encapsulates the manure in that slot. So for one, you reduce odor, so you don't really smell a lot of manure. And so two, by not smelling manure, you're also reducing nitrogen loss from the manure because the smell is mainly ammonia nitrogen, which is like most volatile, like the heat in the sun will volatilize it, so you lose it. So, and then in grass, so guys will you can either just leave it as it makes the slit, and then you can roll it a couple days later with a roller just to help close the slit. But within 12 hours, depending on the rate you use, within 12 hours the ground's already firmed up, and within 2 days you wouldn't even know we'd injected, other than you'd see little lines. 2 days at most.
Do you have hardened surfaces out there? Yeah, I'm wondering if
there will be in some spots, but not in these fields usually. So I just you want to be clear about what it'll do to the spots where we do mow for trails.
Mm-hmm.
So it should have no effect on. And you're talking like the big race entrance part, like at the bottom of field B, along that edge. I'm assuming.
All the way around, we mow those trails for winter use too, and so just want to be clear that we're not going to have more mud or
Shouldn't
trails that
have mud. So
okay.
No, you'll have nothing like that as far as like mud goes, because you're just so much easier to show than it is to explain over a phone. But it's essentially just encapsulating the manure in the ground instead of on top of the ground. And, you know, then it takes rain to help wash it in, you know, and all that stuff. And we would only do it in the fall after the end of season, so it has no impact on racing or, you know, people using the trails during the summertime months or anything like that. You know, then you'd have all winter if you were somewhat concerned about them not hardening back up, so to speak, I guess.
I wonder if maybe it might make sense to do, like if all parties agree that this makes sense to try, maybe it might make sense to do one field and not the other to start. Potentially, I don't know if that would be a possibility, and see what the effect is.
I mean, if you're gonna bring the machine out there, I feel like you might as well do
Might
it
as
all
well
at
do
once,
both, yeah,
but treat it as a test and see, you know,
Just
if
do
it
it.
works, then it works, then if it doesn't, then we figure out something else.
Okay.
Right, cause bringing the machine
Yeah,
out there, doing all that work, you
Yeah,
might as well do
that's
the whole
a-
thing.
It's a good
Yeah,
point.
it'll be, you'll probably leave the tractor and tank in the field and get a tractor trailers and bring in the manure, so.
Right.
Would this expedite the growth of the
can-
grass? Going back to the bobolinks question, would the grass be longer earlier in the spring?
Potentially,
Potential.
I mean, that's the goal.
Potential, it could, you know, there's no, hold on a second.
Guess I can't say there's any hard data on that I'm aware of, but
So it would improve the quality of the hay.
yes.
So I think one potential, that you do make a good point, right? For your efficiency, it would make sense to do field. So, rock outcroppings, I'd imagine that you would want to grind the outcroppings before doing the manure injection to keep that.
Well,
safe.
we can go around them.
Okay, you can go around. So that's my only thought is when it comes to the bobolink field, like that field, is not mentioned for rock grinding.
I don't think
So,
there's any in there.
okay, so yeah, I just wanted to check on that. I don't know if it was. And Carl, maybe you can comment here. Are there rock outcroppings in that field that the bobolinks use, or is it just the shape of the field that, the shape of the field itself, kind of as a hill there that provides them with their preferred habitat, Carl?
I have not noticed any rock outcroppings on that.
I don't think there is any in that one.
Okay, so there's
Yeah,
no concern then about the manure in terms of the bobolinks habitat.
I wouldn't think it'd be a problem as far as the bobolinks are concerned. If perchance it made the grass grow quicker, it'd probably be better.
Okay.
Yeah, that field, no ledge to my recollection.
No, I don't think so either. Not like A and B.
Mhm.
Okay. So just noting that time is running down, and a couple more things to talk about. So we kind of got to the manure reseeding had come up. You know, you mentioned reseeding the fields, and I think everyone I talked to seemed, you know, imagine that that's a normal thing that you have to do in the course of taking care of field.
Yeah.
I think the only potential concern was just it'd be great to maybe see what the list of species is that you'd be hoping to put in the field, just to, you know, confirm that they're because there's some species like canary grass, things like that, that have the potential to be invasive. Whereas other kinds of agricultural grasses are known to be, you know, a little more benign. So
Yeah, well, we probably would work with our crop consultant anyway on that.
okay.
So
So I think, yeah, maybe just being included in that conversation, to make sure that you know, all parties agree that, on the list of species that's gonna go in. But otherwise, there were no concerns presented in terms of reseeding the fields that are currently agricultural. Carl, go ahead.
It's a very elementary question that belies my ignorance. When you reseed the fields, do you plow up the fields and then reseed them, or are you reseeding just from over the surface?
We have the ability to no-till grass seed in. And as far as the fields, there's really no ruts in the field, it's just more, they're not big and flat. So the drill wouldn't be an issue as far as I'm concerned to just no-till new grass seed right into it.
No till, how does that work? Just
Just like puts little grooves in the ground with, and then it covers it up with some wheels.
So kind of like a manure injector, like it draws a little trench.
And yeah, it makes a little trench with some wheels, disc. And then the seed drops in there, and then there's press wheels that close the ground back up again.
okay,
I guess,
sounds easier than I would have thought.
Yeah.
just wanna bring it back to the bobolinks one more time. Are there varieties of grass that start growing perhaps a week sooner than?
I don't know, that's a good question
We
to
might as well ask.
ask the crop consultant.
As far as I know, there's no great preference on grasses, and that the bobolinks will nest in fields of grasses and fields that have a fair amount of forbs in them as well, flowering plants. But they just don't like woody plants. You know, you don't want to have woody plants growing up in your bobolink field.
Right. Okay, and then the last question was expanding, potentially looking at expanding the area mode. And I'm just showing the map. This is Nicholas, this is the map that we looked at when I visited, and Nicholas mentioned in particular this area between fields A and B. You know, just asking, why isn't that has that been hayed before? Could it potentially be area where you could expand?
That's a good question. I always thought we just followed what was there.
Yeah.
When we took over. But yeah, I don't know, but I thought there was ledges in there.
So I think that is it. So that's another thing that I heard from Terry, who knows that area very well.
That wasn't the section I had asked about.
Well, you did ask about that section. That section came up, but you also mentioned this section up here at the top, closer to Governor Cheatham Road. Yeah.
Yeah. I didn't know what the deal with that was. Every once in a while, you by Governor Chin, and you look at it, Governor Chin's like, oh, it looks like a decent sized chunk, and I guess we never did it with Jim, and I was just curious what it was. And,
yeah, we're losing you a little.
About it, I guess.
You're breaking up.
You're breaking up a little, but I'll just say so. Yeah, I think one of the things that Terry pointed out is that in some ways there is a reason that those areas haven't been converted to hay fields. And I know that in the area closer to Governor Chittenden Road, there are a lot of wetlands, and I think those encroach pretty close to the road. So that's a pretty wet area. And then you can't see very clearly on this map, but over here there's a field maintained that John, I think it's called the Wedding Field, is that right?
Yeah.
So that there's a lawn there that's maintained just for aesthetics. So, and then the area in between fields A and B, it could potentially be explored, for increasing the size of that field. But I think the thing to be aware of there is, as Harold said, part of the reason why it has been mowed is probably because it has quite a bit of ledges and potentially some other barriers and impediments to turning that into.
Say that'd be something that should be brush hogged.
Yeah.
Yeah, you gotta be on your see what it looks like. Yeah.
Yeah. So if I'd say that conversation might be more of a long-term conversation. So it may not be necessary to put any explicit language in the current lease about it. If we're talking about in 2.5 years, I'd imagine that it might take that long just to implement some of these things that you're talking about.
Yeah.
Right. It's not all just going to happen in 1 year.
Oh, no.
So maybe it makes sense to kind of table that discussion and do a little bit of exploration in the, during this next cycle of lease to get a little more information.
Yeah, that's totally fine.
Okay.
Now, where did they do the logging? That down the, just on the,
Just off the corner, the bottom corner there into the Talcott property.
yeah,
And
okay.
then they used a couple of the trails to pull the logs out.
I didn't realize there was a site down there.
Yeah, Talcott Woods is owned by UVM, I believe.
Right.
And as part of the forestry management plan in our, on the other side, they went and did this work too.
Okay. All right, so I think just, if possible, we might reserve a few minutes. It looks like Kim wasn't able to make it, so we won't be able to approve the minutes this time. I'll stop sharing this. But we might reserve just a couple of minutes at the end to talk about maybe next time. So if we might take 5 minutes here, just are there any other kind of comments or questions about any of the things that have been floated or talked about so far today?
No, I'm fine with what we,
With me, I'm gonna
yeah,
Okay.
what we discussed.
buzz out. Good to talk to you all. Maybe one of these days I'll make it in person.
Sounds good, thank you.
Okay,
Okay.
Okay, thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Yep, thanks, Nicholas. And yeah, thank you, Harold, for coming. Thank you, Carl, for being here. I really appreciate it. And thank you for everyone for participating. It seems like not only was it a good opportunity just to get everyone in the same room and meet face to face, but some of these questions I think kind of make more sense when we can also understand
Oh,
where
yeah,
it's
right.
coming from too.
oh, it's sometimes emails and text messages, things get so out of whack at times, like, no, let's get together.
Yeah. One quick note in terms of communication on in terms of whenever you're getting up to Catamount. I was chatting with John. It sounds like you've been in touch directly with Andy.
Yes.
Past, he's a trails person, and I was asking if I could be helpful at all, but it sounds like the most efficient thing to do is just to continue being in touch with Andy because he's the person that's got to go
Okay.
out and move the signs. So continue that communication whenever you're gonna get up there, and otherwise that I think on a communication standpoint, that's
I put fertilizer down 2 weeks ago,
great.
and somebody put birdhouses up there by a ledge. I don't know who did that.
That was the bird folks.
Oh, yeah, I did. Yes, I did ask around about that, and I think those are Nest Watch. It's not the Bobolink monitoring group. It's another group of folks out there who look after a different population of birds. And yeah, there wasn't a conversation about that in advance, it sounds like. So it's a conversation we can have. Absolutely. Do those boxes where they are, does that present a significant impediment for you?
It might. We'll see how it works with mowing the first time.
Okay,
I took pictures of like, what are these doing here?
so the question is mostly about I'm not 100% sure where they are, but is it just getting your equipment around them? And,
Well, it's a matter of, you go back and forth as we're mowing, then whatever that. Also now, you gotta make a loop,
right.
so, just like you do around the outcroppings for the trees. But
Does it block off an area that you would otherwise mow? Does it
not really, it's on each side of a piece of ledge, so.
Okay. I think that's what Terry mentioned, is that her intention was to place them in a place that wouldn't be in your way. That's why they were placed close to that ledge. So, and I think what I heard is that there are birds in them right now.
So it's gonna.
So maybe what we can do is, give it your best shot.
Yeah.
And let us know how it goes.
Yeah, right.
And
It's fine.
if it seems like it's gonna be a challenge for the long term, we can move those boxes after the nesting season if that works.
Yeah, okay.
Okay. All right, thank you for that. Appreciate.
Yeah.
flexibility. All right, well,
Brush hogging?
yeah, let's see
question on
if we
that
can,
other
yeah,
business?
grab the last 5 minutes to mention that. Thank you for reminding me, Danielle, and so let me bring back that map. Oh, it looks like Kim did try to join, unfortunately, and I must not have seen the notice, and so
Oh,
Kim
it
was
didn't pop up.
stuck in a waiting room, so that's my fault.
I wonder if clicking on OK would have made it so that we could have seen it.
Yeah, maybe I missed that. So my apologies to Kim. If you watch this at any point, email her an apology as well. But we can do the minutes next time. I do feel bad. Sorry about that, Kim. So I think this is on the other computer. We have a slightly complicated setup here, unfortunately. That might be what I missed it. Okay, so do you want to say anything about the brush hogging?
We do have, from what my understanding was, we have 500 approved to spend this fiscal year on the brush hogging, which I think normally is done in the fall, but was not done. So we could try to see about getting the edges, right, it was around the edges, perhaps getting some brush hogging in this next few weeks. While we're still in the fiscal year with the funds were approved.
Right. I think that's a great idea. And so for the Catamount has a $3,000, and this is me since I'm new, I was just getting this information from Shirley the other day to get up to speed myself. So right, Catamount has $3,000 budget within the annual budget, and so that's money that resets.
Right.
And if you don't use it, it goes away. So I think it's a great idea. We definitely want to. It's brush hogging, something that you talked about last year, and unfortunately wasn't able to happen just for sounds like some logistical reasons. And the year before, the brush hog got bogged down in some of the muddy areas. So I think it's a good idea to get out there. I did reach out to Eric Lackey, who's the individual who's done that brush hogging in the past, and Eric was happy to do it this year, and so proposed that we meet out on site next Friday at noon. So anyone who's interested in joining in on that and who happens to be available at noon on Friday, which I know may not be most, would be, of course, welcome to join us. And the idea would be just to walk out to the sites and take a look and talk about, where would be the priority. Obviously, it's unlikely that he'd be able to brush hog all of the areas. This was one older brush hog map that noted, this wetter area up here, and of course the place between fields A and B. There's another brush hog map that is newer. And let me just share that real quick. So that is this one. This was intended to show a schedule of brush hogging for a couple of years. Again, with the intent of that brush hogging being to help control some of the woody invasive species that are growing. Now, this showed some different polygons, some of which I don't fully understand because some of these polygons are shown in the field. So I'm wondering if this was the margins of the fields. Does anyone sort of recognize or understand what why there would be a red polygon in field B or these green polygons in the edges of these fields?
I mean, it looks like the red one is what happened in 2021.
Yeah, there's a
Right.
key in there left there. Just timing, it looks like.
Yeah, that's the only thing that I can see there.
Okay.
In terms of what's good now, nothing on the north side that's in those polygons is drivable.
Right.
That's where
That's where it got stuck,
at.
because in the
Yeah.
long one. And then I would say on the other side, really the piece between fields A and B that get mowed, that would be probably okay. And probably the lower corner, but not the the field, you know, adjacent to the wedding field.
Yeah, that's probably too wet.
Over there.
Which is the one, when you say lower corner, do you mean this one?
Yeah, that.
Okay, got it, okay. All right, so we can take a look at those. Yeah, I also,
Wasn't potentially the perimeter on some of the,
oh, maybe that, I
that
think
was
you're
the
right, maybe
suggestion,
that's
it's like
what this
perimeter
is.
growth of things between the mode trail,
And
And-
what gets mowed for haying?
yeah. Where
Yeah.
there's some, you know, saplings pushing up.
Terry did mention that. That makes sense. I also, when I spoke to Terry, who had initiated some of these ideas for brush hogging some of these areas. Terry's idea was that the areas that you mentioned, John, that are wet, they might just be areas that are kind of too wet for brush hogging in the long term. Like at least some of them are wetlands, and it might just be that brush hogging is not the best approach for managing those lands. So for now, at least, the areas on the south side are probably better to focus money and time on.
Yeah.
Okay, so
All right.
we're, yeah. This is an unofficial meeting, I guess,
This is
because
the
we didn't,
first one,
yeah.
I feel like
We
we've
didn't
had
have
for a long
a very
time
productive meeting, and
without a forum.
yeah, appreciate everyone's input. Any parting words?
Thank you.
Well done.
Yeah.
All right, thank you. I will not be at June 12th.
All right, Carl, thank you again. Really appreciate your input and for being here, and have a good night.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Carl.
Thanks,
Good
Paul.
to be
Yep.
here.
So Danielle said she's gonna be here June 12th.